Good evening and welcome to another weekly edition of Everything Vaguely Paranormal. I am Ryan Roberts and these are my partners in the paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith and Miss Shelley Pruitt. How are you guys doing today?
Good evening, kind sir.
Okay. Fucking Andy Cap over here.
I'm doing quite well. How are you, Shelley?
I'm doing great. I'm in my evil twin phase right now.
I'm in my evil twin phase as well.
I'm feeling very dark and dastardly this evening. Do you like my lip color? It's a new shade.
I do.
It's called Fuck 'em. That's literally the name of the color.
Oh, is it now?
Very
Yeah,
nice.
actually it is.
I am in my Sherlock Holmes detective stage.
I'm
look
here
like you're
for
about to, you look like you're the heir to a hot fries corporation.
Damn near made me spit my espresso out, man.
Yes, because we're talking about evil twins. I did the eye makeup a little bit darker, did the face a little paler, did the lips a little more red, and decided I'd wear blue because blue is very trustworthy, right?
Well,
Allegedly.
red's usually your color, and blue is
I
the opposite
know.
of red.
So my evil twin, the red one's kind of like, hey, look at me, who cares?
Right.
But the blue says, no, look over there at the red one.
And I decided to be my evil twin tonight and look like a penis with a hat on. So.
I don't think you look like that.
Well, you are what you eat.
I think you look very handsome.
Fuck you, Ryan. Fuck you, my friend.
Yeah, and I had to put my hair down like the little emo swoop because.
Yes, take us back to 2005, my friend. Take us back to 2005.
But I got to get out of my eyes because I got to read tonight, and it's hard as hell to see past my damn hair when I'm.
And we already know that Hooked on Phonics did not work as well for Ryan as
they did not.
It worked. It did for me.
It worked. Your education, my friend.
That's right. Exactly.
Oh my God! Tell these fools what the hell we're talking about tonight.
All right. So tonight we're gonna have we're gonna talk about some evil twins. There's going to be two stories, get it, twin stories. And we're going to dive into see if, we're going to talk about some twins who just went rotten. And I am very excited to get y'all's opinion on these stories, especially the second one. The second one, I got some opinions. I'm excited to hear what you guys' opinions are. But I'll go ahead and jump right into it.
Let's do it.
All right. So some say that twins are born with an unbreakable bond and possess a deep connection only they can understand. Often feeling like two parts of a whole, they share everything. Some even say a psychic link. One thing is for certain, twins have a truly unique relationship. But what happens if when these relationships go bad? When the twins become evil and commit crimes and turn whole communities upside down? Tonight, we are going to take a look and find out just what happens when siblings go rotten and become evil twins. Lightning crash in the background.
Yeah.
All right. Our first story takes us all the way to the great state of Georgia, where we examine the story of a dutiful brother and his bastard of a twin that drives him to do something he never thought possible.
Damn, Ryan.
Ryan's editorializing just a little bit here.
I mean, wait, geez, this guy's a piece of work. This is the story of the Henry brothers. So Gregg and Jeff Henry were born on January the 23rd, 1955, in the sleepy little town of Dublin, Georgia, to a chemical plant manager named Dick and a stunning local beauty queen named Sue. Sue's pregnancy was a difficult one, and she had a difficult time in the birthing process. So in order to have an easier birth, she had a C-section. The C-section was even a tough one. But in the end, all went well, and she birthed two healthy twin boys. All seemed to be going smoothly. That is until 4 months later when Gregg became very sick. The once healthy boy was now knocking on death's door, and he rushed to the hospital where they determined he had a rare brain issue. And the hospital had no choice but to give him a spinal tap, a risky operation that could have harmed him for life. But much to everyone's relief, the operation was a success, and Gregg made a full recovery. After that, the twins were the belle of the ball. Absolutely every family member and neighbor tripped over themselves to shower them with affection, and the boys' parents did the same. Everything seemed perfect for the little Georgian family, but just as they were riding high, tragedy struck in the worst way. Dick was diagnosed with an aggressive form of brain cancer in 1958 and died in 1959 when the twins were only 4 years old. leaving Sue to raise 2 growing boys on her own. But because of the tragedy, the brothers became extremely close and leaned on each other for support. They helped each other out when they could and retreated into their own shared world. But everyone around them saw something that became very evident. Gregg seemed to dominate his brother in every aspect of their lives. He always was the most outgoing and gregarious of the two, and Jeff was the more quiet and submissive brother, often following his brother's lead in every situation.
And that's not unusual with twins.
Mm-mm.
Usually there is a twin who is more outgoing, more dominant personality, and there's all, just like in most groupings, there's a leader and there's a follower.
Right.
So yeah, that's not unusual. Okay, so nothing untoward yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
So the twins shared their brotherly bond, but grew up to become entirely different people who couldn't be more opposite. Jeff was painfully introverted and physically frail. He could barely read or write and struggled through high school. No matter how hard he tried, he can only muster a C average, and that made him very self-conscious. He also had an inferiority complex when it came to his brother Gregg, because Gregg could pick up women with no problem, but Jeff couldn't if he tried, so he felt overshadowed and cast aside. So Jeff turned more inward and began tinkering with radios and speakers, and he found that he had a true knack for it. He spent hours learning any and everything he could about them, till he got to the point he could fix any radio that he touched. But while he was tinkering and working on them, Jeff began to dream about building society-altering machines he truly believed he could build, and he had great ideas and great inventions that he thought he could use to make the world a better place. But while Jeff was dreaming of helping the world, Gregg was off being the typical jock, only concerned with impressing whatever girl that happened to be close by, and showing off for his circle of friends by riding his bike through the halls and picking on his brother. Jeff didn't want to make waves, so he took the abuse, and more often than not, let Gregg get away with it. But on the rare occasion the abuse became too much, Jeff would stand up for himself and earn himself a vicious beating from Gregg. But despite the beatings and ridicule, the brothers still remained close. And when they graduated high school at the age of 18, the two decided to get jobs in a mailroom at a local business and save their money to get an apartment together. The brothers moved out of their mother's house and into a nice place. But after a few years in their apartment, Gregg married his girlfriend and moved in with her, leaving Jeff to fend for himself. But Jeff couldn't handle being without his brother for long. So he moved into Gregg's basement, which put a strain on his relationship. And Jeff watched as Gregg's marriage deteriorated, and eventually Gregg's wife left.
Yeah, you got your brother in the basement. It's time for him to move out, honey.
Yeah, I mean, but twins, I mean, they're going to try to be around each other as much as humanly possible. And
yeah, but you don't need to let one live in the basement. No, it's fine. Get your own house, buddy. Next door will be fine.
But much to Jeff's delight, because Jeff had his brother back, so he was happy when she left, because he was like, "All right, cool, me and my brother again."
That's right.
The two brothers were left alone in Gregg's marital home, but neither of them could afford it. So they pulled their money and moved into a nice apartment in Clarkson, Georgia. The eligible bachelors now had a nice place of their own and plenty of time to sit around and ponder on life. So they began to talk about where they wanted to end up and what kind of careers they wanted to have. So after a few cold ones, the brothers determined that they were going to be rock stars. And Gregg wasted no time going after his new career and bought a new drum set.
How old were they?
Hmm?
How old were they?
They're probably in their early 20s at this point.
Okay.
So while Jeff bought a bass and began to teach himself how to play, neither one of them could really play all that well. But they had a few friends who were interested in music, and they were able to convince them to join their band. The group began practicing a few times a week. All the while, Gregg and Jeff would get so hammered they could barely stand. But Gregg demanded they keep playing until he was tired, and the other band members usually obliged. But one night around 2 a.m., the rest of the band was tired and decided to go home, which sent Gregg into a terrible rage and caused him to punt his drum set from one side of the room to the other. Each band member just shook their head and left. all except for Jeff, who the other members could hear being cussed as they left and went and got in their cars. After the late night band debacle and numerous noise complaints, the brothers ended up moving into another apartment. But instead of the spacious apartment they once had, the new apartment was a one-bedroom, which was a bad idea due to the twins' volatile relationship. And to make matters worse, around this time, the twins really got into guns. Both brothers had bought shotguns and would talk about them to anyone that would listen. And as you can imagine, the guns soon came to play in their arguments.
So hold on before we
Yeah.
get out the point. By the way, everybody's loving the name changes, the outfit changes, all this stuff. But sidetrack, side note. Mr. Wandell's having fun in the comments. He said, haha, evil Shelly, what the hell did I miss? And he said, what did y'all do to get evil? And I said, we can't disclose what we did yet. He said, so we've been dealing with the good Shelly this whole time?
You have no idea, Mr. Wandell. How do you like the lipstick, Chad?
Oh, God.
Brand new just for you, boy.
Anyways, yes, we are celebrating Evil Twin Night. So we are Evil Blake, Evil Ryan, Evil Shelly. And these are our, this is who we are. We're evil. We're evil tonight. So, anyways, go ahead, Ryan.
Jesus Christ. So early one morning, Jeff showed up at his friend Jason Hill's apartment, shaking like a leaf on a tree and barely able to speak. Jason asked if he was okay, and Jeff said, "No, I'm not. I have to get away from Gregg. He got mad and pulled a gun on me." Jason agreed and told him to get out of the apartment. And that afternoon, Jeff moved back in with his mother, but ultimately ended up moving back in with Gregg 2 weeks later. But things in the apartment didn't get any better. The twins continued to binge drink, and Gregg continued to pick fights with Jeff. When Jeff fought back, Gregg would grab his gun and began shooting up the apartment around Jeff, leaving Jeff in abject fear for his life.
Fucking
These
move.
fight.
It's a fucking move.
Yeah,
Jesus.
Yeah, but I think it's that weird. It's that codependency because they were so close when they were growing up, and not that that's an excuse, but I think that's why because Jeff was weaker and he didn't know what to do with himself.
What was going on with Mama this whole time? Because Mama and Jeff comes back in, and it's like, Big Brother's being mean to me, and Big Brother Gregg, he's the one that had to have the spinal tap, correct?
He is, yeah.
Okay, so we've had a brain issue. Okay, go ahead.
Now, you were asking about the mom. The mom, as you'll see later on in the story, she kind of is noticing what's going on.
Okay.
And
so you're going to tell me about it.
Right. Yeah, okay. I'm going to tell you about it, but she's not very happy with what's happening, but she kind of knows what's going on.
Okay.
So these fights and shootouts continued to get worse. And by 1989, their mother, Sue, had had enough and put her foot down. She made her boys quit drinking before they hurt each other. And Jeff and Gregg listened to their mother. Because deep down, they knew they needed to quit. So they got on the wagon, got new jobs at Circuit City, and began getting along with each other. But the brothers couldn't stay sober very long. A few months into their new gig, they fell off the wagon hard and picked right back up where they left off, downing case after case of Budweiser and getting blind drunk. Gregg began torturing his brother again. But this time it was way worse than before. He would threaten Jeff with his shotgun and wear him down mentally and emotionally, to the point Jeff had to ask permission to even go to the bathroom. Jeff couldn't handle abuse anymore, so he withdrew even further and became a sullen shell of his former self, doing whatever Gregg asked of him. Gregg sensed that he had broken his brother's will, so he began demanding Jeff cook him dinner and serve him beers. And Jeff dutifully did as he was asked, even thanking his ungrateful brother as he did it. Shelly, you got something to say?
Maybe the wife didn't leave because there was a brother in the basement. Maybe this dude was just a dick.
I think you might be onto something there. So things went on in that.
I'll serve you dinner with a side of rat poison. Let's go.
So things went on in that apartment. What?
I said bon appetit, el raton.
That's evil Shelley's plan. That's what evil Shelley would do. Right. Absolutely.
Exactly. So things went on in that apartment like that for quite a while, until late one night in June of 1991. The security officer for the brothers' apartment complex had been dispatched to their apartment after a particularly loud argument. The officer pounded on the door trying to get their attention. And when the brothers finally answered and let him in, he found two grown men covered in blood. He noticed Gregg had a giant gash on his hand, and he scanned the room and noticed blood all over the wall and the door. So he asked them what had happened, but both brothers refused to answer. Frustrated with their lack of answer, he told them that he was going to have them evicted and left the apartment in a huff. Gregg was so angry with the intrusion and the threat from the officer that he slammed the door with all of his might as the officer left. But the officer made good on his threat, and a few days later, the brothers were forced to move out. They quickly moved everything into an apartment across the street, and once they were settled in, Gregg commanded Jeff to go back to the old apartment and clean up the blood, while he stayed at home and watched football. Jeff, of course, did as he was told and went back to the old place, where he spent all afternoon on his hands and knees, scrubbing the blood out of the carpet and off of the walls. He even hauled every last old rancid beer can out of the home, all by himself with no help at all while Gregg sat on his ass. Gregg didn't know it yet, but Jeff had a rage boiling deep inside. So deep that Jeff didn't know it either. But both would find out the extent of that rage on a cold winter's night in December of 1991. That Sunday started like any other day. The brothers got up about noon to watch football, and like any other Sunday, began sucking beers down one after another like they were going out of style. That afternoon, Gregg got hungry and ordered Jeff to cook dinner. Jeff hopped right up and did as he was told, getting done just in time for the second game. The two ate and continued to drink well into the night. And by 1 a.m, the two were absolutely tanked, and Jeff was trying to make conversation. So he brought up one of his theories for a new pollution-free form of energy, which quickly angered Gregg. He always hated when his brother tried to sound smart. So he laughed right in Jeff's face and told him how much of a dumbass he thought he was. Jeff got angry and stood up for himself, telling Gregg that his theory was sound and he had a right to believe what he wanted. And this only angered Gregg more. How dare his weaker, wimpy brother stand up to him? So he lunged off the couch straight for Jeff and knocked him out of his chair and into the floor. He then picked Jeff up by his hair and ran into his bedroom like the coward he was. Jeff was still trying to figure out what had happened and realized that his brother had run into his room. Jeff suddenly remembered arguments from the past and knew if Gregg went into his room, it usually meant he was coming out with his gun. So Jeff decided he would beat his brother to the punch and ran into his room to grab his first. Jeff opened his closet and snagged his rifle, gripping the cold steel in his hands. And as if a switch flipped, his lizard brain took over, and every bit of the ridicule suffered at the hands of his bastard brother seemed to bubble up inside of him, and Jeff saw red. As if he was a man possessed, Jeff barreled down the hall to Gregg's room. Once he reached his destination, he used the barrel of the rifle to push Gregg's door open. Gregg was lying on his bed as if nothing had happened, and locked eyes with his brother just long enough to hear Jeff scream, "Take this," and pull the trigger. Before Jeff could think about what he was doing, he saw Gregg's chest explode and a fountain of blood spray across the room. The sight of the blood brought Jeff back to reality, and he could not believe what he had just done. So he ran out of the room to pull his head together. But after a few minutes, it seemed to dawn on him that his brother was actually dying in his bed. So he ran into Gregg's room and placed his hands over the gaping wound, doing any and everything he could to stop the bleeding, begging his brother not to die and to stay with him. But it was too late. Jeff had killed his brother. Jeff screamed at the top of his lungs and ran out of the apartment not knowing what to do, ultimately deciding to drive to the nearest payphone and call his mom. By the time he found one at a local gas station, it was 2 a.m, and he called his mom and woke her up from a dead sleep. As she picked up the receiver, Jeff screamed, "Mom, my God, I've killed Gregg. I tried to revive him. I did everything I could, Ma. He's dead." Miss Henry told Jeff to calm down and stay right where he was. She was going to call the police and meet him at the gas station. But little did she know there was no saving her son this time. The police arrived at the gas station to find Jeff standing under a streetlight, covered from head to toe in his brother's blood. Officer Hicks had been the first to arrive and was the first one to find Jeff. As Officer Hicks got out of his car, Jeff screamed at him, "I've killed my brother." Officer Hicks didn't really know the situation, and all he saw was a drunken, crazed man covered in blood standing in the parking lot. So he drew his gun and told Jeff to stay still. Jeff obeyed, and Officer Hicks approached slowly and handcuffed Jeff. And when he realized Jeff wasn't going to harm him, he directed him into the back of his police cruiser and asked Jeff where he lived and headed that way. On the way over, Officer Hicks radioed for backup and met with his lieutenant, Eddie Morris, in front of the brothers' apartment. The two officers searched the apartment and found the shotgun shells from the fatal blast on the bathroom floor, and Gregg still laying in his bed with his chest agape. It was clear the officers had a homicide on their hands, so they hauled Jeff in and charged him with the death of his brother. Jeff sat in jail for 3.5 years, waiting to go to trial for the murder of his brother. While in lockup, Jeff got himself a really good lawyer named Bruce Harvey. And the entire time Jeff was behind bars, Bruce worked on his case. Bruce was very smart and knew Jeff had been abused, so he decided to go with the battered wife defense. Even though Jeff was a man and his brother was the abuser, Bruce wanted to make the case that not only are men abused, but siblings could also be the abuser. It was a hard sell for a Georgia courtroom. But after a long, hard legal battle, Bruce was able to get Jeff a lesser charge and talked the court down to voluntary manslaughter. The court ruled that Jeff could be released for time served, so Jeff got to go home with his mother. And although he got to go home, it hasn't been very easy for him because Jeff was still haunted by images of his brother. No matter how hard he tried to forget, he couldn't, and saw Gregg every time he closed his eyes. And Jeff never forgot the night that he killed his brother. So that's the first story. What do you think about that one?
That's.
So I have questions.
Sure.
So you said the shotgun shells were found on the bathroom floor, but Gregg was shot in his room.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean the layout of the house was he had to come through a Jack and Jill bathroom to get to them? Because that's interesting, because you would think if he went through the door that they would be ejected back into the hallway.
Right.
Unless perhaps that bathroom was on a corner and you came and you opened the door, and when you came out, there's the bathroom entrance.
I don't know.
Just strange. Okay.
I didn't get the floor plan to the.
It's also going to depend. It's also going to depend on how the round is ejected out of the gun too.
Right.
It's not going to just be the fact that it's just going to go backwards. I mean,
right. So you think old Gregg had it coming?
Well, yeah. I mean, people can only take so many fucking years of abuse before somebody snaps. I mean, like, do I condone? No, I don't. I mean, like other ways.
You don't condone murder,
no.
Right.
Other ways could have taken place besides murder or something like that. But do I understand? Yes, I can understand on a human level of the years of abuse from your sibling, and then all of a sudden you're just like, fuck it, I'm done. And you just literally have blind rage take over, and you kill your twin.
Right.
So let me ask you guys a question.
Sure.
We all agree that we can see how this man would have snapped.
Right.
So I'm going to ask you: have you guys ever? Ryan used the phrase, "He saw red."
Mm-hmm.
Have you, either of y'all, ever actually experienced that moment of seeing red?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh yeah. It took a lot for me to get there, but I've gotten there before. Absolutely.
Yeah. Mine was it's not necessarily abuse. It was old relationship. My thing is still to this day. It's like, do not back me into a corner where I feel like I have no way out other than to go through you, because I will defend myself. And it was in this moment of a past relationship, heated moment where I got backed into a corner, and I was trying to remove myself from the situation, and I could not get past the aggressor, which was my partner at the time. And instead of putting hands on or anything like that, blindly, don't even remember doing it, saw red, reared back, and punched a concrete column and broke this whole basically side of my hand.
Jesus.
Because I hit it so hard. I mean, they finally were like, okay, I'm sorry, you know, but it's so much that you can take where it's just like you feel so threatened over and over and over and over again. And this person is advancing or the abuse is getting worse. You snap in that moment and you see red. And on top of that, he probably also felt like he didn't have another way out because it was his brother, you know, just in the example I gave, the aggressor coming at me, I was backed into a corner. I didn't have any other way out. So I had to show aggression to get past the aggressor. But even in that blind rage, seeing red moment, I knew better than to swing on the person. That's kind of a little bit different between me and Jeff.
Right. Well, right. You were still like aware of other people.
So you know. I don't think you truly saw red, if that's the case. Because in that moment that you see red, and I'll tell you, it's happened to me
subjectivity.
Twice. Yeah, maybe.
I think it's subject, yeah.
Maybe. I think it depends on your anger level. It's happened to me twice. Where in that moment, my whole thing was somebody is about to get hurt and I'm about to do the hurting. And it is this moment where the first time it ever happened to me again was also in a relationship. And I had just had enough. I had had enough. And anybody that knows me, they know the stories. And it was this moment of I can't take anymore. And it was one step too many, one push too hard, one, you know, comment that was after years and years and years. And in that moment, I saw red. And I don't remember seeing anything. I was in a blind rage in that moment, a rage that I had never, ever felt before. And had they not been wise enough to recognize that something snapped in me and immediately left, well, first of all, they were a coward, but second of all, you know, they dished it out, but they couldn't take it when I had hit my limit. It's probably a good thing that they recognized that I was not myself. The other time was someone threatened to do something to my child, and I saw red in a way I've never seen red before.
Oh, I can imagine.
And I was in a room where there was a mirror, and in my head, suddenly I went, if you just grab the back of their head, you can slam them into the mirror, and if it breaks, guess what? You have a weapon. That's the level of seeing red I went to. And I'll say that because I didn't do it. But that kind of snap, that kind of rage where you see nothing, there are no consequences, there is no thinking in the moment. There is only this can happen, then this can happen, and then this problem will be gone. And that's why, you know, I always tell you guys, I try really hard to control my temper because I have a terrible temper. But in those moments that you see red, that you legitimately see red, it is a blind, terrifying rage that until you actually feel it, you don't understand the kind of power you hold within yourself.
Yeah.
The kind of malice and evil that you could potentially truly be capable of.
And I think that yours are a better side-by-side comparison to the story versus, like, you know, your examples of the blind rage seeing red. I think the difference between my comparison to this story versus your comparison to this story is basically like self-preservation.
Right.
That also has to kick in, because was it one of those things like in my scenario where it's like
yours was self-preservation. My first scenario was as well.
No. That's what I'm saying. I think yours is a higher level of self-preservation. Was I in that one instance where this argument was taking place and I'm backed into a corner, worried about self-preservation to like my life's going to end? No, I was worried about just get me the hell out of this situation, kind of
and mine wasn't a situation.
Yours was actual, yes, and that's I think a great, better side-by-side comparison with Jeff's situation, because Jeff in this story, it is literal life or death for him.
It is, but something else too, like something Shelley brought up, I do find very interesting, because you said had you were in that situation, had you put that person's head through a mirror, you could have used the shards as a weapon. I think it's very interesting that you say that, because Jeff had that rage in him, but that rage didn't click until he had a weapon in his hands.
Right.
So I wonder, had you've been in that situation and had the weapon, would you have followed through with what you were thinking about? Like seeing that red and having that like I said, having that like primal brain kick on. Like
it was complete primal brain.
Yeah. You know,
well,
I wonder.
I'll tell you this. Fortunately, being that I'm not a violent person. I don't believe in putting my hands on people. I don't believe that you touch. I mean, you leave people alone. The second that I realized that I was having these thoughts in the second situation, I was like, what are you doing? And my reason and logic is like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Back out of this room. Get out of this room. You don't need to talk to this person. Get away, get away, get away. And it clicked in. But it took the second of a thought like that going through my mind. And I know what that sounds like. I know what that sounds like for me to say, but you would have had to have been in the situation to understand. So when people say stuff about, especially people in abuse situations, where they say they've had enough and that they snap, I so empathize with that because I've had that situation. And to see red, to genuinely see red, it takes more control than you ever think you have over yourself, because you've got to pull yourself back not to act. That urge to act is so incredibly strong. So fortunately, I didn't have to really actually act in either situation, but I was ready. I was ready and I was willing in that moment. And the one where you're right that my life truly could have ended, it was that moment of just like, what have I got to lose? It's either fight back or this happens. So yeah. So I think Jeff is I don't want to say anybody deserves to die, because he deserved to sit in a jail cell the rest of his life.
I don't think he did. I don't think he deserved to sit in a jail cell. Like you said, like this is someone who was abused their entire life by somebody, and they in a moment of not necessarily a moment of weakness. It was just like you said, self-preservation. He did what he did, and I mean, who's to say it wouldn't have been him had Gregg had gotten his way at some point? Gregg gotten too drunk and like gotten pissed at him and shot him and killed him.
I feel they both show poor impulse control.
Oh, absolutely.
They would fight like this all the time. They would pull their weapons on each other all the time. So, and we know that the older brother Gregg, we know that he had, again, here we go again with this, something wrong with brains. Something's wrong with the brain, especially early on in life. But it's funny, the one that had that issue is I think he wanted his brother around, or else he wouldn't let him live in the basement. Now, why he actually wanted his brother around, whether it was codependency or he wanted someone that he could just bully. Because there are people who their personality is just to bully other people. That's how they define who they are. So I'm not sure why he would keep him around if he seemed to irritate him so much and bother him so much to the point where he wanted to injure him.
But I mean, you've all seen people in those types of those types of relationships where, they fight like cats and dogs, and then like one of them ends up leaving, and then like a day later they're back in the same cohabitating under the same roof.
Can't live without them, and the devil is better than the devil that you don't.
Exactly. But the thing about Jeff too here is he was kind of in a lose-lose situation all the way around, because he had to defend himself against his brother, but the fact that he killed his brother still haunts him. And when he closes his eyes, that's all he can see is his brother. And he feels that missing piece the rest of his life, even though he had to do what he had to do. Not had to do, but even though he did what he did to help himself. No.
Because if his brother was lying down on the bed, his brother was not taking an aggressive stance.
Right.
I will edit a little bit of what you said, Ryan, to where he did what he felt he had to do in that moment.
Right.
In that moment with the abuse, because you said they were both headed towards their bedrooms, right?
Yeah. So like, because Gregg went into his bedroom and he had come out before with his gun.
Yeah.
And so Jeff was like, I'm going to head him off at the pass. And went into his bedroom. And when he grabbed the weapon, he just fucking lost it.
You have years of abuse followed by this brother, followed by a pattern that Jeff has seen over and over again take place with his abuser. All of a sudden, this pattern is replaying out in real time. his body recognizes this pattern. This is what's going to happen. He instinctively gets up. He go to his room. He grabs the gun. All of this is happening before the logical brain can kick in. That's the issue. And that's where I say, I amend what you said by saying he did what he felt he had to do, because before the logical brain kicks in and stops him, which we see when he goes to plug his brother's chest and try to stop the bleeding, he fires the fatal shot and kills his brother. So all of this is happening under trauma-based conditioning that he's gotten so freaking used to. And so his body is recognizing this pattern. It's like, I got to defend myself. So he, quote unquote, sees red to defend himself because he's done with it. And then all of a sudden the logical brain kicks in. Now, I will also agree with you, Ryan, that I do not think that he should spend the rest of his life in the jail cell. I don't agree with that either. I think there has to be something taken into account of the years of abuse. And I'm really interested. He tried to pull the battered wife clean. Right. That's interesting.
I think it's since been changed. I don't believe it's called I don't think it's called the battered wife syndrome anymore. The defense, I don't believe it's called that anymore. But let me clarify something. I didn't say that I thought Jeff deserved to spend the rest. Gregg, the older one, the abuser, he didn't have to kill him. That guy deserved to spend the rest of his life in jail. He didn't deserve to die. He deserved to go be somebody else's bitch.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
In a jail cell. That's what he deserved.
Right.
So, but that defense is actually something that anybody who's a survivor of that kind of emotional, physical, psychological, sexual, physical, mental, relationship structure, no matter whether it's spousal, sibling, familial, even, that defense should absolutely be taken into account, because there is something, your brain is rewired. During things like that. Your neurological patterns change.
Yep.
And it takes you forever to get out of a mode of being in this mode of self-preservation. It takes a very long time to ever feel safe, to be able to ever feel like you can exhale. I don't know a better way to put it. That you can exhale. You're always holding your breath.
Yeah. I would agree with you on that, Shelley.
Well, you're constantly in fight or flight.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, between Gregg and Jeff, like, you also, they have something different that even, Shelley, with what you've been through, what I've been through, that we even have that's different, is you have the familial connection at the same time. This is not just a abusive partner. This is an abusive brother.
Right.
That your siblings are there for, basically, unless you're the oldest one, they're there for your entire lives, basically. They're you come, if you're younger than them, you come into a world where they already exist. And so there's a whole nother level to that, just on that alone.
That's a conditioning since birth almost.
Right.
I know.
That's not a conditioning from this year to this year. This is a conditioning since birth.
Yeah.
Now, see, again, then I go back, why didn't Mama step in and say, hey, we don't treat our brother like that? Or, hey, let's be nicer to each other. And I'm sure she probably tried.
So, I mean, I think that maybe she felt like she couldn't do, there wasn't much that she could do, because she was a single mother raising two boys. And once they get to a certain point, and especially because, like, a lot of, like, the real hardcore abuse started happening as they got older. And at this point, she's probably like, well, they're adults. I can only tell them to stop and put my foot down so much. They're going to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
So I think maybe
they're adults. It's out of Mama's hands. But yet they'll still call her, Mama, guess what I just did? Oh my God, come and rescue me.
Right. And the way she was so calm about it and, like, told him to stay, it was almost like she was expecting that to happen. Like, one of these days, one of these two is going to kill each other.
But if you've got somebody who's on a ledge, you have to stay calm. You have to go, okay, I want you to stay right there. I'm coming to get you. Because the last thing you want to do is, you've already lost one child. You damn sure don't want to lose that second one, no matter what's been going on.
Yeah. I think my final thoughts on this is, I don't agree that Gregg should have died. I do believe that Jeff did what he felt he had to do. I don't believe that man deserved life or anything like that. I think that he got exactly the sentence, I guess you could say. that he deserved. So
I'll agree.
That one is wild. I will say it did not go the direction I thought it was going to go. I thought we were going to have Gregg talking Jeff into doing something very malicious and devious, and that's
too.
what they were going to get in trouble for. So,
well, let's roll on to story number 2.
Yes.
So story number two. Story number 2. I think y'all are gonna. It is quite salacious, so it's going to be.
Let's roll.
It's going to be really interesting. So,
all
right. So Betty Wilson and Peggy Lowe were born on July the 14th, 1945, on the edge of the Appalachian Mountains, in the tiny little town of East Gadsden, Alabama, to a man named Oscar Woods and a woman named Nell. Now, Oscar was the chief of police, but he was a terrible human being. The very man that was in charge of the safety of the community was a vicious monster, terrible drunk, and devout racist, who would often get blind drunk and attack the poor black community for fun. But when his thirst for violence and humiliation wasn't satisfied, he would bring it home to his wife and daughters, often coming in all hours of the night and waking them up by shining high-powered flashlights directly into their eyes in order to get them out of bed so he could berate them.
Motherfucker, you do that to me, and I'm going to come up swinging. Don't you be shining no high-powered freaking flashlight in my eyes.
This is the daddy of Peggy and
Betty. Betty.
Peggy and Betty. Okay,
Peggy
so this is their daddy.
Right, this is their dad. This is the kind of environment they grow up in.
Okay.
All right.
So he'd shine the lights in their eyes and get them out of bed, and then force them to eat Ben Gay as he laughed as their mouths burned from the ointment. But as the girls got older, Peggy and her fraternal twin Betty learned to hide and lock themselves in rooms when their father came home. No matter how much he ranted and raved, threatening to hurt them, if they didn't come out, they would stay in and take care of each other. It was a hard lesson to learn, but it taught the twins to always look out for one another. And most of the time, the outgoing Peggy was looking out for her shyer sister, Betty. The girls grew up and eventually went to high school, where Peggy was the queen of the school. Everyone loved Peggy. She was praised and doted over by everyone for her good looks and her charm, and had every eligible high school boy throwing themselves at her. Everyone was fawning over the beautiful young woman, but not so much Betty, because Betty was much more plain, shy, and reserved. Betty wanted the attention her sister was getting, but decided to go about it in a different way. So she began running with a rough crowd and staying out late at night with boys and drinking and skipping school. Even though she became somewhat of a pariah, all of her life experience began to pay off. In her late teens, it was like a flip switched, and Betty really came into her own and began to do very well. She even began to date a local boy and have a healthy relationship. But when it came time to go to college, both she and Peggy opted not to go. Instead, they opted to settle down with their respective boyfriends, and soon they were both married. Things were great for the twins. They were married to the men that they loved and were living on their own. But within 4 years, their marriages fell apart. And the twins were again single women. Betty looked at her situation and realized that she had to leave. She had had enough of the small town and moved to Huntsville, while Peggy was content staying in her hometown and married a local choir director named Wayne Lowe. While in Huntsville, Betty's impulses got the best of her. She had gotten out of a restrictive marriage in a small town, so she went a bit hog wild. She went through job after job and blew all of her money on sports cars and clothes. She knew she needed a change and to somewhat settle down. So when the new Humana Hospital opened in town, Betty decided to apply for a position as a nurse. She got the job and decided she really liked what she was doing and wanted to pursue a career in nursing at a higher level. So she enrolled in classes at the University of Alabama and within 3 years graduated with a nursing degree, which allowed her to move up the ranks, and Betty became the newest RN specializing in dialysis there at the hospital. All that new responsibility came with a whole lot of money, and Betty began to hit the town quite a bit. But after a while, Betty began to burn out and no longer wanted to work. So she began to tell everyone that would listen that she wanted to marry a rich doctor and stay at home. And lo and behold, not long after that, she met Dr. Jack Wilson. Now, Jack Wilson was born in Chicago to an unwed mother. He never knew his father, and his mother just couldn't care for him. So she put him up for adoption, and an absolute nutcase named Rita Wilson snagged him up. She was not a good person and cared nothing for her adopted son, because her MO was going around and adopting kids just because she felt like it. As he grew, he felt more like a burden, because Rita never showed him or his siblings any affection. She was a hateful and cruel woman who would often beat them if they stepped out of line or misbehaved. So Jack's home life was an absolute nightmare, and his life outside of the home was no better, because he was bullied at school by the neighborhood children. So Jack had no friends and no paternal support. He felt so alone and so isolated, but he didn't let his loneliness defeat him. He knew there was more to life, and he was determined to find it. So he really buckled down and hit the books. He was going to do whatever he could to leave his sad existence behind and become somebody. And eventually his hard work paid off, and he landed himself a spot in Occidental College. And while in school, Jack spent long hours in the library, pouring through book after book and consuming as much knowledge as he possibly could. There he stumbled across a book that would change his life. It was a book on eye diseases, and after reading it, it really lit a fire inside of him, and he gained a passion for optics. So after graduating from Occidental College, he enrolled in Tennessee Medical School, and everything seemed to be falling into place for Jack. But Jack began to have stomach issues. So he went to the hospital and was told that he had Crohn's disease. This was a major blow to Jack's confidence. He was so happy things were going so well, but now he had this setback to deal with. However, the doctors had some good news for him. They told him that they could help him get better, but they would have to cut out the parts of his intestines that were giving him trouble. Even though Jack was upset about the diagnosis, he declined because he didn't want to walk around with half an intestine. And he told the doctors he would have the operation only if it got worse. And eventually his stomach did get better and the disease lay dormant. And Jack continued with his studies. Eventually he met a woman and had kids and settled down after graduation. And by 1978, Jack had his own practice in Huntsville. But the long hours took a toll on his marriage, and Jack was very quickly divorced. Jack was absolutely wrecked. Even though he was 33 with his own practice, he felt like a complete failure. The divorce had made him a depressed wreck in his private life. But at work, Jack put on a mask and was completely different in person. He had sick people to take care of, so he couldn't be sad. So he couldn't be a sad sack. So around the office, Jack was the jovial, fun guy everyone liked and knew, often treating patients with little or no money for free. And just to make their day better, walking them out to the payment window and telling the nurses to put them on the quote-unquote 100-year payment plan, while laughing with them and sending them out the door with a wink and a nod. It was about this time that Betty heard about the young doctor and his good nature and his good looks. But it was a little bit before she got to meet him. And one day, Jack had to come to the Humana Hospital to perform a surgery on one of his patients. Betty made it a point to meet him and was instantly attracted to him. So she hedged her bets and asked him out on a date. Jack, of course, said yes so fast it made Betty's head spin. He couldn't believe Betty was attracted to him. He had felt so low, and Betty had pulled him out of his slump. His spirits were lifted, and the two began dating. They were getting along great, having a blast, and within 9 months, they were married. Betty had finally bagged herself a rich doctor. The early years of their marriage were fantastic. Jack continued to work long hours, and Betty continued to party. But the two still made time for each other and spent several years in marital bliss. Jack's practice suddenly began to take off, and money began coming in. Before the young doctor knew it, he was a millionaire. And this did not go unnoticed by Betty, who pressured Jack to buy a brand new 2-story home with an Olympic-sized swimming pool in the most expensive neighborhood in Huntsville. Jack just wanted to make his wife happy, so Jack bought the home and showered her with expensive gifts and provided Betty with the life she had always wanted. Jack and Betty seemed to have it all, and life seemed to be on easy street. But by 1982, Jack's Crohn's disease hit him harder than ever before, and his worst nightmare came true. Jack had to have all of his intestines removed, and as a result, he had to wear a colostomy bag for the rest of his life. But there was another nasty little surprise waiting for him. The operation had caused Jack to become impotent. And to make matters worse, Betty did not take this well at all. Her drinking was always bad, but it became worse. She would get absolutely blacked out drunk and berate Jack, telling him that she hated him and began calling him a little shitbag. Jack didn't deserve any of this. He had tried his best to provide for her, and here she was humiliating him for the one thing that he couldn't help. And to add insult to injury, Betty began going to parties and sleeping with young men she met at the gatherings. Afterwards, she would go home and tell Jack all about her exploits, which hurt him to his very core. But he still loved his wife and wanted to find a solution for his problem. So he bought a high-powered penis pump to make him be able to have an erection.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so proud he told Betty and convinced her to rekindle their relationship. The couple went to bed together for the first time in a long time, and everything was going amazing until Jack's colostomy bag became dislodged and covered them both in crap. Betty was absolutely furious and jumped out of bed completely disgusted, calling Jack a shitbag at the top of her lungs before jumping into the shower. Jack felt absolutely dejected, and Betty sank further into the throes of alcoholism. Eventually, she hit rock bottom and enrolled in AA, but AA proved to be ineffective, and she used it for the wrong reason. Instead of going to get sober, she used it to troll for men that she could take back home and have sex in her and the doctor's bed, further deepening the divide between her and her husband. By 1986, she was telling her friends that she wanted out of her marriage, but she didn't want to give up her lifestyle. Divorce was on the table, but it proved to contain one problem. If she divorced Jack, she wouldn't be able to keep her fortune. So that was out of the question. But if her husband died, she could keep all the money, which sounded fantastic to Betty. So she made the decision to kill Jack, plotting his demise. But it would take her a while to pull the trigger. During Betty's troubled marriage, she leaned on her sister Peggy. While Betty had moved into the big city, Peggy had stayed behind in their hometown and became a well-known first-grade teacher. Even though there was a considerable distance between the two, the sisters talked on the phone every single day and discussed everything going on in their lives, including the potential murder of Jack Wilson. Betty told Peggy about her predicament and asked Peggy if she knew anyone that could help her. And as a matter of fact, Peggy did, and his name was James White. Now, James was a Vietnam vet, alcoholic, and hustler, with 4 children from 4 ex-wives, that walked with a limp and was covered in tattoos. Peggy had met him for the first time outside of her school and genuinely felt sorry for him. So she hired him to do odd jobs in her classroom in August of 1991. He was in Peggy's room every day, and the two built a bond. So it wasn't long before Peggy began to vent to Jack all about her strained marriage to the local choir director. Vent to James, sorry. James listened to Peggy talk and slowly fell in love with her. He figured since her marriage was on the rocks, he had nothing to lose. So he began to write Peggy love letters, which she loved. And in turn, Peggy would kiss James, making James fall for her even more. The two carried on like this for a while, when finally one day Peggy told James that she wished her husband was dead. James's ears perked up and he joked, "Well, I know someone who can take care of that." But James didn't know just how serious Peggy was.
Okay, wait a minute. Hang on. Mm-hmm. So Betty with the doctor wants to knock off her husband.
Yes.
And the first grade teacher with the choir director husband, the twins both are having marital issues at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So Betty says this to Peggy. Peggy's like, "I might know somebody." Then mm-hmm. Peggy starts talking about it, and this guy says, "Oh, I might know somebody."
Yes.
Was it basically Betty asking first about that?
Yes, it was. Well, as I said, it was Betty asking first. And so what I'm about to get into is Peggy basically was kind of floated the idea of killing her husband, but then she was and then she walked it back. No, you're fine.
I'm not trying to jump your story. I was just trying to clarify
totally
that both the sisters are having marital problems at the same time again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But James didn't know just how serious Peggy was, and Peggy brushed it away and told James that she could never do that to her husband. However, she had been talking to her sister, and her sister Betty needed someone to carry out a job like that. Now, James would have done anything to please Peggy. And once he found out how rich Betty was, he jumped at the chance to please his crush and make some money in the process. So a few days later, Peggy put James and her sister in contact, and Betty offered James $5,000 to off her husband. Even though that was a small sum of money, James wasn't very smart, so he agreed. Betty paid him half up front, and James instantly went down to the bank and, inconspicuously as possible, paid off a couple $1,000 loans. He deposited the rest in his bank account, and he then went to hang out with some friends at a local pool hall and told them, quote, "Some rich bitch was paying me to offer her doctor husband."
Okay.
Dumbass,
Yeah.
So
dude.
many issues here.
Right.
So many issues.
Wow.
Immediately puts the money in the bank. No, that's paper trail. Pays off some big bills. No. You keep paying your little minimum monthly like you've been doing for at least a little while. Come on now. And now he's going to go bragging about it. Remember how we know? It's like somebody's always talking. Okay, go ahead.
Right. I mean, like he is not a very smart man, and he is a very big time braggart. So this raised a few eyebrows, but
you said everybody thought he was kind of crazy, though, right?
Yeah, everybody thought he was. I mean, not crazy, but he was just he liked to brag a lot. I said, but James was a known liar. So his friends wrote him off and as him just telling drunken tales. They were like, yeah, he's just talking to hear himself talk, whatever.
Okay.
Now, with half of his money in hand, James spent the next few weeks avoiding Betty and Peggy. But in mid-May of 1992, Peggy finally got a hold of James to set up another meeting with Betty because Betty wanted her husband dead by Memorial Day. Peggy told James that Betty and Jack were about to go out of town, and Betty couldn't stand the thought of being with him for more than a whole week. So she needed the job done, and she needed it done fast. James really wanted the other half of his money, and he wanted to make Peggy happy. So he agreed to meet with Betty at Peggy's house on May the 20th. The day came, and Betty drove all the way up from Huntsville. She met with James and gave him a .38 pistol to carry out the hit, and gave him detailed instructions on how to get into Jack's office. James was to carry out the job the next day. But as he drove down to Huntsville, it was decided it was too dangerous to kill Jack in his office. So he called Betty, and she agreed to put James up at a nearby hotel, where it was decided she would sneak James into the house and have him kill Jack there. The next day, on the 22nd, Betty snuck James into the house and made sure she was shopping across town far away from the crime scene, while James waited in the shadows for Jack Wilson to get home. Shortly before Jack got home, James ran upstairs and hid in the doctor's bedroom. He heard the lock click, and Jack Wilson plopped down on the couch. James began to move, and Jack heard him making noise upstairs. And not being one for confrontation, Jack swallowed his fear and grabbed a baseball bat by the couch to go upstairs and see what was making all the racket. Jack slowly looked around upstairs and checked Betty's room and found nothing. But when he walked into the hall, he was face to face with his worst nightmare. James White was standing right in front of him. Jack's heart jumped out of his chest, and he tried to lift his baseball bat to hit James. But before he could, James snatched it out of his hands and began swinging and landed blow after blow on the top of Jack's head, causing blood to pool in Jack's eyes, rendering him blind. But still, Jack tried to defend himself by swinging wildly at James, which only pissed James off. So he swung the bat over and over again, striking blow after blow directly with Jack's arms and head. Finally, Jack gave up and went to the ground, looking like he had been put through a meat grinder. But a ruthless scoundrel like James wasn't going to let him off that easy. So he pulled out a knife and stabbed Jack in the chest and stomach over and over again until he quit breathing. Jesus. With the job done, James ran downstairs and exited the house through a garage window, where he found an impatient Betty waiting on him in her BMW. James hopped in the car, and Betty drove him away from the scene of the crime, returning to her house at about 9:30, where she worked up a fake story in crocodile tears before calling the Huntsville Police Department and telling them that she came home to find her husband in a pool of his own blood. Detectives showed up to the house not long after and found a hysterical, sobbing Betty asking who could have done such a thing. For the next few days, Betty really played up her distress. When friends and family came to check on her and give her support, Betty hugged them and cried with them. giving them the illusion that she was devastated without her partner. Even at the funeral, she stood silently and sobbed beside the casket. Betty thought she had everyone fooled. After Jack Wilson was buried, Betty met with her attorneys and was told she was to receive a $6.5 million fortune from Jack Wilson's estate. What she heard when she heard this news, she played it calm, cool, and collected, but deep down inside, she was elated. She had completed the perfect crime and was about to get away with it. Everything was going to plan and was coming together perfectly. But there was one problem. Dr. Jack Wilson was very popular. So when he died, his death was big news in all of the local papers. And a few days after his murder, James White had been boasting to a friend that he had been hired as a hitman to kill some big shot doctor and that a couple of twins were involved. The friend thought it was serious enough to tell the local police department, and when Jack Wilson's death hit the papers, Vincent, Alabama Police Department sent the report to the detectives down in Huntsville. So the Huntsville detectives paid James White a little visit and formally apprehended him. The detectives hauled James in and began interrogating him. And at first, James denied knowing anything about Jack Wilson's murder. But as the heat was turned up, James began to crack and finally admitted knowing Betty and Peggy. The detectives had all the evidence they needed to tell James that he was now the prime suspect in the murder of Jack Wilson. The information proved to be too much for James to handle, so he told the detectives he would confess and tell them everything they wanted to know if they promised he wouldn't fry in the electric chair. The detectives agreed and listened to James, as he told them about how Peggy and Betty had recruited him and paid him to kill Dr. Jack Wilson. The detectives had everything they needed. This was going to be a slam dunk case. So they moved very quickly and arrested the two sisters. Betty Wilson and James White were denied bail instantly, but Peggy's situation was a little bit different. Peggy was such a sweet and caring soul, her bail was set at $150,000, and because Peggy was such a sweetheart, the First Baptist Church in Vincent, Alabama raised the bail money to get her out and proclaimed Peggy's innocence. Betty, on the other hand, had a different experience. She sat in solitary confinement for the next 8 months, and her trial began on February the 23rd, 1993. Betty showed up dressed to the nines, which did nothing to help her image. And when James White hit the stand, she knew she was screwed. James recounted his testimony and included information about he and Peggy's intimate relationship that led to his meeting with Betty. Peggy was called to the stand a few days later, and she denied any kind of affair with James White and said she had only given him work in her classroom. The jury had heard all they needed to hear. And on March the 3rd, 1994, Betty Wilson was charged with plotting the murder of Jack Wilson with her twin sister to inherit his money. The sentence for such a crime was death, but everyone was shocked when the judge gave Betty life because her own stepchildren stepped in and asked for that sentence, saying they wanted to show mercy to someone who had shown their father none. As for Peggy, she was cleared of all charges after a successful PR campaign that affected the jury so much that they acquitted her. Betty wanted it all, and in the end, she had nothing, all except for a lifetime stay in the all expenses paid Gray Bar Motel, where I think she's still there to this day, if I'm not mistaken. She might be dead at this point, but
the fucking Gray Bar Motel run. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. That's where she went.
No, like
she was
what a greedy bitch.
What a terrible person, right?
What a horrible person. Number one, I'm just going to rip this shitbag, as she liked to call her husband, a new one, because like if it comes, how fucking shallow can you be?
Right.
Like
you're supposed to love this person,
Christ.
And
your husband has fucking Crohn's disease, and his intestines get removed, and all of a sudden there's a colostomy bag. Okay, no, I'm sure you didn't dream up Mr. Prince Charming with a colostomy bag, but guess what? It's your fucking husband. Number one,
right? Like
in sickness and health type shit, and then incompetency, and then that pisses you off. Okay,
right.
It happens in men. It happens. Like, geez, oh, what a shit bag. God, this woman.
And he did everything he could to make it work. Like he tried whatever he could because he still loved his wife. But
to sit there and listen, you have to be some kind of fucking evil if your husband is sitting at home and you go out and you're fucking other dudes and you come back and you tell them about all your goddamn exploits. That is a shitbag. That is next level evil. Sorry, she's trash for that.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially as much as he loved her, and something I didn't put in here, like there was actually a partner that she had that she like would parade around Jack and like made Jack meet this partner, and like he knew that they were doing it for years and years and years, and he couldn't do anything,
bullshit.
Yeah.
And then you just get so greedy.
It's bullshit on either side of that coin, whether you're a female doing it to a male or a male doing it to a female.
Right, absolutely.
That coin works both ways.
Oh, yeah, it totally does. I mean, I'm great. I'm going to sit here and probably assume, I'm just going to assume, this is probably nowhere in the writings or anything like that. I'm going to assume that with the Crohn's, the Crohn's disease, the intestines being removed, colostomy bag, incompetency and all that stuff, that some type of impotency, thank you, that some type of agreement probably would have been formed,
right? And if it's between two consenting adults, that's completely different. But I don't think Jack was consenting in that.
But to be blatant and rub it in their face,
that's the part that
even if an agreement was made, you don't do that, even if there's an agreement that's or an understanding that you have. But I don't think there was an understanding. I think that I really feel for poor Jack. He seems like he was a tortured soul from pretty much day one. And what's funny, though, was kind of met up with another tortured soul in Betty.
Right.
But the difference is he tried to be better and she just went worse.
Yeah.
He came to want to find a stabilization and a happy balance in his life, and she decided she was going to go high and to the right, and she became as destructive as her father seems to have been.
Right,
now,
but I mean, but that just kind of shows. Go ahead.
I was going to say, now with Miss Peggy fascinates me a little bit because I think Peggy was every bit as much as evil as Betty. Just Peggy, because she had grown up being the one that was doted on, she had learned to smile in faces of people that she didn't want to smile in because she had to, because she was the, this and that, and she was a school teacher and she was the choir director's wife. And in church, what you say is bless your heart and you smile. And so Betty would just go, I ain't going to church. So you have these two very polar opposite sides of of a coin. And Peggy was better at the face game than Betty was.
Right.
We agree with that.
Right. Now, do you think, do you think that Peggy actually, because James was a known liar, like people knew that James was a big time liar. Do you think that Peggy actually manipulated James into doing what
they lived in different towns, correct?
Right, but
how in the world would Peggy have?
No, Peggy and James
lived in the same town.
Right, but the sisters lived in different towns. So how else would Betty have come in contact with James if it were not for Peggy?
True. I mean, she could.
I don't think Peggy should have gotten off scot-free. I'm sorry. I think Peggy had
absolutely not
in this. Peggy was the catalyst that got Betty and James
paid the money, correct? I'm sure she got it from her sister, but Peggy's actually the one that handed the cash, correct?
No, Betty gave the cash.
Yeah,
Peggy was the one that got them in contact with each other.
She was the middleman. That's the thing.
She was the middleman, but she was also manipulating James.
Absolutely.
100%. Allegedly.
Yeah.
Right? Allegedly. Let's go allegedly.
I'm not going allegedly. 100%.
Oh, well, the fact that you said that he was walking around town saying that he was hired by some rich bitch to, this and that.
Offered off her husband.
I think James might have thought that perhaps he was manipulating both of the sisters. Because that's what these people who are bragging and do that kind of stuff do.
Honestly,
like, look what I can do.
I honestly don't get the sense that James was that cunning and or smart. I think that James was just kind of like one of these, like, He was a meathead that liked to run his mouth.
Okay.
And he was he was a known hustler, a known liar. And I think he ended up fucking them all up because he couldn't keep his stupid mouth shut. So, I mean, I think it is a travesty. I'm with you. I think it is an absolute travesty that Peggy got away with it. Like, but she ran a successful PR campaign. That is exactly what happened.
You know what? And sometimes that's what gets it. And especially if the jury becomes tainted over that at that point because of a good PR scandal or a good PR, team, whatever. But she is 100% just as culpable in this as anybody because she's the go-between. You have James on this side, Betty on this side, Peggy in the middle. She has to initiate something between her sister, who she's grown up with and loves and wants her to get out of this marriage just as bad. Because I'm sure Betty was probably sitting there be like, oh, he does this, he does that, making it seem worse than it is. And her sister is going to do anything to get her sister out of that, or a twin is going to get anything to get Betty out of that marriage. So, hey, I know a guy. This guy is not maybe the smartest in town. People know that. He is easy to take advantage of. I think that it was 100% Peggy taking advantage of James throughout this. Because, come on, $5,000.
Right.
That's a cheap hit, man, right?
That is a cheap effing hit.
Yeah.
So I think that Peggy is.
Ooh, I don't like this story.
Here's
I have
thing,
words for this story.
Here's what you have to question: would Betty have ever actually gone through it with it? Had her sister not put her in contact with the person who did the deed? Betty seems like a lot more talk than actual action.
I think because she planned it. She planned to kill him. She just didn't. She took her
planned
to pull the trigger.
But we can plan to go to Disney World, but if we never actually get somebody who can say, here's where you buy the tickets, you never go, right?
Right, but she was not gonna. There was no way she was not gonna have her fortune. She wanted money. That was what motivated her at that point. Like, she did not love her husband anymore. All she wanted was his money, and she wanted out, and she knew if she were to be divorced, she could not get her hands on the entire fortune, and she wanted it all.
But again, you have to come down to, would she actually have done it had her sister
I think absolutely
not put her in contact with the person who did the deed? Because she didn't seem to be necessarily actively seeking it in town, because you didn't tell me any reports about people in town were saying she was talking about killing her husband. She's only talked about it with her sister. So and her sister puts this person in her path that actually can do this. Well, she's got every available she can pay. She wants it done, but she doesn't seem to be actively seeking someone to do it. But Peggy says, oh, wait, I can save you. Here's somebody who we can get to do it. And guess what? He doesn't charge a lot.
Right. I think if it wasn't James, I think she would have tried to have found somebody else, because I think she wasn't walking away from that money. I think that's exactly what she wanted.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. I'm saying this is, but would she ever have done it? Because she put up with it for so long, however long this marriage actually was. She put up with it that long and pretty much could do whatever the hell she wanted to do. So the need to kill him, it's kind of like she could have continued on, spent every last dollar, let him have the money keep coming in, and would probably figured it out. But again, she had her sister kind of backing her.
That's what makes this so much more sinister, though, is because she could have done that. She could have stayed in that marriage. She could have done what she wanted, but she just could not resist rubbing it in his face every time she did.
Well, that doesn't have anything to do with killing him. That just makes her a horrible person on top of all of it.
Right. I'm saying, but if that was her option, if she had truly wanted to stay in the marriage, she would have just went along doing what she wanted to do and not have rubbed it in his face every single time. I think that she was a horrible person who wanted his money. And I think that because he did not do everything that she wanted him to do, I think she did come to hate him, even though there's no grounds for that. I think that she did come to hate him, and I think that she definitely would have had him killed.
Well, anytime you stay in a place.
Excellent point right there.
What does it say, please?
One of our viewers said, I think she would have. She just happened to ask her sister first.
Very good point.
I agree. I will give. This is pretty. I have words about this story. This story pisses me off.
Go ahead, man.
Here's my take on it. For this, I think she would have done it, and I agree with Pam in the comments saying that she just happened to ask her sister first. That's how her sister got involved. And that's how it ended up come into fruition. I think she would have done it anyways. I think that Betty is classic narcissist. All she's in it for is the money. When she's not getting her way, or I don't know, harder times earlier in the marriage or whatever, she's like, fuck you, and then all of this medical stuff starts happening to Jack. His name, sorry,
yeah, Jack, right? Yeah, Jack Wilson,
right? To Jack, and then she basically like turns up the heat, and oh god, this makes me so mad. Anyways, it's like if you're one of those people that you're not really in it for sickness or health, you're in it for money, you're in it for whatever reason, and shit happens with your partner, or you have an agreement of some sorts, and you're going out and you're sleeping around and you're coming back and you're rubbing it in their fucking face just because, I don't know, they can't get it hard in the bedroom for you. Maybe that was more the issue. I'm going to go with that issue anyways. That's shitbag territory.
Right. Yeah.
Piece of shit in my mind. I think she still would have gone through with the murder. I think it would have happened. I just think she happened to call her sister first. That's how her sister got involved, found the person, and then, basically pulled the trigger for her, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think she would have hired some other hitman or found a friend or something. These types of women or men, I'll put it on both. I'm not going to say it's just women, but these types of women or men who want to control it, the relationship, the money, in a very narcissistic way, like this is being described. They're going to find it. They're going to find a way to make it work in their favor. If they can't make it work in their favor, then they are going to make it all about them. And they're going to find a result that they want in the end, regardless.
Right.
So.
Right. And two, like, I'm with you on that. I think the reason why she went with James is because it was the path of least resistance. Because her sister knew someone. Because if she's putting out feelers on
her too.
She trusts her sister, and also the type of person that Betty was, she was not going to associate with anybody that would have been in that world to kill somebody like that for her.
She already did. You said she grew up, went for the more harder life growing up, so she already had ties.
She did, but as she got older, when she got her rich doctor, she became Miss Prim Proper. I want to live in the biggest house in the biggest part of town, designer clothes, sports cars, furs, all this. I'm not going to associate myself with the lower rungs of society. So I think that had a lot to do with it too. And I think that Peggy knowing James was the path of least resistance for her. So I think she would have done it regardless, but James was just the easiest way to do it. What do you think, Shelley?
Well, I think that domino was going to get kicked over either way. It just depended on from which end it started. And I think that
that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, I think that her sister allowed her to kick the domino. I think Peggy allowed Betty to kick that domino over. Wow. It's very funny that how one twin, Peggy, was very praised and, very exalted, was the prettier twin, so she was paid more attention to. And even at the end, she's still the school teacher who's backed by the church, married to the choir director. She gets off a lot easier. But her sister Betty, the not as pretty twin, who kind of had to scrap and scrounge for any kind of attention because she stood in her sister's shadow. And then so she runs with a rough crowd. She figures out a way to marry a rich doctor. She marries him, and then suddenly she's like, look at me. I've got to have the big house. I've got to have the cars. I've got to have the clothes. I've got to have the men. Everything that her sister had. So it's like this underlying jealousy that almost propelled her to be where she was. So whenever her life wasn't perfect, she had to fix it and change it just like she'd done all the other times. So yeah, I think these dominoes were going to fall. And it's unfortunately that whole stack of dominoes collapsed right on Jack.
I agree.
Yeah, God knows. I mean, yeah, Betty and Peggy can both kick rocks.
Now, with that, Blake, why don't you tell them everything they need to know?
All right, sounds good. I feel like this is going to create a great post-broadcast discussion.
Oh yeah, we're going to talk some more.
Speaking of post-broadcast, if you want to support the show directly, check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/EVP podcast. For just $5 a month, you'll unlock over 450 Patreon exclusive videos, including the pre and post-broadcast, which are the 30 minutes before and the 30 minutes after this live broadcast. So you are getting an additional hour with us every single week. We're still not sure if that's good or bad, but hey, take it. Your support from this goes directly back to the show and towards the adventures that we bring you week after week. And if you're not sure about joining Patreon, try it risk-free with our 7-day free trial. Make sure you stay connected with us. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and many more by searching Everything Vaguely Paranormal and looking for the green sound wave. And remember, you can catch us live every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our Eventbrite page to be notified when public investigation tickets for 2026 go on sale. We got some exciting things in store, so go subscribe over there as well. And also, don't forget to check out our merch store for all your merch favorites: t-shirts, coffee mugs, stickers, pillows, hoodies, and much more. That link is everything-vaguely-paranormal.creator-spring.com. And to make this easier, we've added all of our links to our link tree, which will be on Everything Vaguely Paranormal Facebook and X profiles Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, as well as in all of our show notes for you audio listeners, or you can search linktr.ee/everything vaguely paranormal. We are grateful for your continued support. Every like, comment, share, and download keeps the adventures alive. So if you have a favorite episode, share it with your friends. One of the easiest things you do to help out our show and its rankings, if you have any type of account where you get your audio from, head over there and simply download our episodes and leave us a review. That is it. And if you have a story, comment, or question, or would like to be a guest on the show or have us as guests on your show, email us at the evppod@gmail.com. That is THEEVPPOD@gmail.com.
Go like, share, and subscribe to that YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know you were here.
So thanks again for tuning into another weekly edition of Everything Vaguely Paranormal. I am Ryan Roberts. These are my partners in the paranormal, Mr. Blake Smith and Miss Shelley Pruitt. And we will see y'all next Tuesday.
Bye,
y'all.
Bye, y'all.